across my entire experience, one of the things that I was very clear about, or one of the things that I observed, was that founders, operators, right, like ourselves, we are primary consumers of financial information, but none of us understand accounting, right? I mean, like, it just makes zero sense to us, and we just dump it on someone else. But we are all waiting for the reports that, that come out of it, right? So the question over here that I was asking myself was that, is it possible for us to do accounting so fast, right, that budgeting, targeting, MIS reports, right, annual operating plans, all of these things effectively just become a click of a button away, right? So around that front, what we are building is essentially an AI native accounting firm for smaller businesses, but an extension of finance teams for larger businesses, where the product effectively, obviously, digitizes the entire FinOps process so that as the business scales, the accounting or the finance team does not linearly scale up in parallel. Plus, of course, agents, AI, everything in the mix, right? So predominantly, that's what I'm trying to do, disrupting the second oldest profession in the world, right? And hopefully successfully.
I'll give a quick introduction about myself as well. One of the co-founders and CEO of nRev. My professional journey started about almost 15 years ago. It's so hard to think. 2014 was almost 15 years, not 15, maybe 13 years ago. But started on the B2C side, co-founded a company back then as well, which got acquired and then moved mostly to the B2B side for the last 8, 9 years. I've been mostly on the B2B SaaS side, used to lead product at Mindtickle, and now started off with my co-founders who were also a part of Mindtickle to build nRev. And nRev is a GTM orchestration layer. By the way, we as an early business as well are a loyal customer of Rishi's for his accounting firm, accounting agents, and more than Rishi, I think his accounting agents. But yeah, this webinar is mostly about understanding his journey, where the inflection points came. What are the future inflection points, Rishi, you're looking forward to, and how you're planning that? So yeah, I'll spotlight completely on you. So we'll start with the initial bit of context, Rishi. I was thinking that if you could give a little bit of context about what you understood about the business right off the bat when you were starting your GTM. And from there, what were the initial challenges, and then where did that first inflection point come as to where your conversation started happening? I feel that would be a good, starting point for people to, ask some questions or kind of figure out if the context is correct for the rest of the webinar.
No, absolutely. The interesting advantage that I enjoy, and potentially a lot of other businesses would not, is that I don't need to educate or create awareness around what I'm trying to do, right? From a deliverable perspective, right? Everyone's very clear around what accounting entails, right? What are the outcomes around accounting, GST filings, like you have to do GST filings, book closure, TDS filings, MIS reports, etc., etc. So from that perspective, the advantage that I had was that I didn't need to tell people that, hey, this is what I'm trying to do, right? That was very clear. What I needed to establish is that why am I different, or how am I different from anyone else, right? And over there also, to be very honest, I don't want to take too much credit, right? There is a tailwind that we are currently riding on, which is that, okay, fine, AI implementation, AI adoption within businesses will naturally create efficiencies, right? And lead to better outcomes, right? Faster, etc. So from that perspective, the advantage that I had was clubbing accounting, which is the second oldest profession, plus saying that we are AI native, right? Automatically created that stickiness, because now people were like, all right, fine. I'm not just getting the outcome that I was previously getting, but I'm also getting it in a scalable fashion such that as my business scales, I don't have to worry about scaling my team as well. And this is a common first stage problem, right? Where you effectively have to establish what are you trying to do and why does it matter to the person who's effectively buying it, right? Fortunately, I was not running into that particular problem. The second bit of the journey of mine is specifically around selling, right? GTM, core dhanda mein, I mean, like outright selling, right? Was how do I get my first 10 customers, right? To be very honest, the first 10 customers effectively came through network, right? Spend enough time in the market to know enough number of people who were making as stupid decisions as I was, which was, okay, fine, let's start off and build something of our own, right? So from that perspective, I got my first 10 customers from there itself, understood what works, what does not, what is a repeatable pattern, what is essentially core requirements that they have, and things like that. And by that particular point of time, engaging with nRev essentially really worked out for me, because at that point, I was ready to create the flywheel, right? That, all right, I have a persona that I've already identified. I've identified a segment that feels the pain the most in this entire, category, right? Now, is it possible for me to use that persona plus that industry and effectively create a flywheel such that my entire GTM is automated largely, right? And that's where nRev comes in, because I want to, I mean, like, fundamentally the kind of person that I am, right? I'd like to build businesses on a first principles perspective, right? Cash flow, right? Now, I don't have an assumption that, okay, fine, there is capital in the bank, right? My primary assumption is that, all right, it's the revenue that needs to meet your operating expenses, and then thus your business needs to scale. I understand that not a lot of businesses have that liberty, right? Completely aware of it, so don't hold it against me, right? But I wanted to build it from a cash flow first perspective, right? So from that end, the other advantage that I had with nRev was that outcomes were extremely tangible, right? That, okay, fine, there's an X amount of cost that's going into a particular business. How much, or what's a quantifiable outcome that do I get from it, right? I have my conversion metrics already in mind that, okay, fine, if I speak to 100 people, right, 20 of them will show interest, maybe 10 of them will convert, right? So from that perspective, right, if the math is already in play, now I know exactly what I need, right, from a solution like nRev. And today is the day where we do effectively want to build businesses with lean teams, right? So even before I thought about hiring a person on my sales side, right, my first assumption was that, is it possible for us to work with fractional teams, right? Can I have a fractional marketing team? Can I have a fractional sales team? Can I myself am a fractional finance team? So from that perspective, that's another bill that fit, right? Because I don't want to hire an intern, primarily because I don't want the overhead to effectively manage an intern. I understand a lot of businesses effectively work with interns and all. I'm not a big fan, right? Because I don't have the time. The second bit was that I also didn't want to hire a full-time resource because I wanted to set some SOPs in place. And hiring a full-time resource essentially means a lot of opinions plus an expense, right? That maybe I'm not ready for. So in that situation, nRev essentially comes in to effectively, one, help me set up this entire SOP in play, right? Help me set up my processes, help me set up how does my outbound GTM effectively look like. And going forward, any salesperson that I effectively hire within my team, I just closed one sales hire who's been working with us for the last 1 month. They work under that umbrella, right? So that's essentially what the journey looked like over the last 1 year. Effectively worked with my network to close my first 10 deals, created a candidate persona, right? Like vis-a-vis who's effectively found my solution to be the most useful. Then also created the candidate vertical for which my effectively paid point is the highest, right? That they effectively resonate with. Therefore, it dictates stat around your sales cycles, it dictates willingness to pay, right? Use those two things to effectively then figure out how do I automate my entire GTM outbound motions. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, Rishi.
Awesome.
And I just forgot to perhaps mention this to the audience that this webinar is completely open. So like, just feel free to either unmute yourself. Let's not disrespect a speaker while they're talking. So like, just take a little bit of consideration. Feel free to raise your hands or unmute yourself to ask any questions. Also, Rishi mentioned that the context about Rishi's business is where there is no education, but we can also talk about in some certain cases when you're looking at like enterprise selling where there is a little bit of education or let's say market creation in capacity. So we can talk about some of the use cases there as well. We work with quite a few companies in that space, so happy to kind of answer that, Rishi, or hypotheses in those space also I think would be valuable. But going forward from where you know where things started. Sorry, I think the first question came in from Gaurav, which mentioned which channel are you using for outreach. Again, Gaurav, like you can just unmute yourself and ask any further questions as well.
Awesome. To answer this very simply, everything, right? And I'll tell you why, right? Now, under the assumption that cost is not an issue, right? The 7-time recall thing is a fact, right? Now, the question is that how often or how do you effectively show up 7 times, right? And is it possible for you to effectively spread that across multiple channels, right? 7 times over email, it gets irritating,
Yeah.
right? Now, the reason why we did email, LinkedIn plus outbound calls, right? By the way, outbound calls is the highest conversion across any market, right? Even in
So
the US,
India is your target market, right?
correct. For me, India is
Also,
a target. US also we sell something, right?
okay.
But again, like for operators, US is, I don't sell to operators in the US, right?
Okay.
I sell to operators only in India, right? So from that perspective, we use email, LinkedIn, and phone, right? Outbound calls. I have my lowest conversion rates on email, right? But I haven't stopped that. That's because when I reach out to them over phone, a bunch of them have read my emails already, right? So I'm just trying to think about it from a recall perspective. I need to land up in front of my customers, potential customers' eyeballs 7 times, right? Now, in a cost effective manner, or what's the most cost effective manner for me to effectively target all these 7 recall methods, right? Potentially across multiple channels so that it does not get irritated. And also so that I don't get, stacked under in a particular inbox. So from that perspective, how it works with us that we've effectively designed with nRev is that you have
Okay.
3 interactions over 4 interactions over email, 3 interactions over LinkedIn. And the moment the second or the third email goes out or the second LinkedIn message goes out, then we also effectively get an option to call them at that particular point of time. Right. So we've engineered this entire process to feel more like a pipeline rather than independent actions that you would have to take, right, as your own business, because then it just feels a lot more organic, right? Like, for example, my LinkedIn message says, my first LinkedIn message says that, hey, following up on my email, right? Now, the way it's been designed is that only once the email goes out will I now send the LinkedIn request, right? For the LinkedIn message to drop, right? So by then, they've already gotten the email, right? So again, being able to design these things courtesy nRev, definitely don't have the mind space or the time to effectively do these things manually by myself, right? So yeah, sorry, yeah, Seema,
No,
go ahead.
Hey Rishi. So Rishi, in regulated industries like finance or let's say legal tech, getting a product shipped out with AI still have a lot of ambiguity because people have this notion that is it safe for me? Is my data safe? Should I use it? Will it take my job or will it help me in my job? So when you're navigating through this, after you zeroed down on the persona and then when you figured out the GTM, how did you establish that trust so people would come and buy from you and have that brand affinity with your company?
Guys, I'm going to say something extremely controversial, right? I'm not sure because I mean, like the market's divided. It's getting a lot of steam now, right? But I've been doing this for a year and a half, roughly 2 years. Like people are only becoming fans now by doing services, is the answer, right? So I get onto my call and I tell them that, boss, I don't want you to do anything, right? Let me show you what I would do at times faster than what your team would do, right? So essentially, what my enterprise pilots effectively look like is that cool, you have a 3% team who's managing payables, hypothetically, right? And they are closing payables by the 10th of next month. If I close your entire payables by the end of the month, I've won, right? And then I need the deal, right? And over here, the advantage is that I have zero dependency on the person, right? I don't need them to understand how to use a product. I don't even need to explain to them how I'm doing it because I'm in the business of outcomes, right? If I use a product, if I use people, doesn't matter as long as I deliver it on the time. I want to use the product because it's just a lot faster for me to do it rather than doing it manually, right? And of course, that's not a scalable method. So that's how I do it, right? I very intentionally became a services business because I didn't want to teach people how to use the product. I'm coming in from a like Spotcraft sells legal tech solutions, right? Today I'm selling accounting solutions, right? Both personas have the same problem. For the how many ever years they've been doing their work, they've been doing their work with one particular SOP within one particular set of tool stack, right? Tech stack. For them to learn something new is like a massive ramp up time. I don't have that time, right? I don't want to spend that time, right? Especially for a customer that's potentially paying me $15,000-$20,000 a year, right? I'm like, cool, let them do whatever they want to do, right? I will do the same work faster, more efficiently, and more cleanly, such that all of the things that you want, I don't need to spend another 2 weeks after closing your books to prepare those reports. They will also come up through the platform directly, right? Now, once that value has been established, how does the buyer decide to deal with their own internal operations? That's not my problem, right?
No.
So doing it in this format essentially allows me to exclude myself from all of those discussions and decisions.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this definitely helps. Thank you so much.
I completely second Rishi in this. I think we are in a similar kind of a business where outcomes kind of make a lot more sense as compared to the hows of things will work and what people will have to do. I think that becomes an extremely valuable differentiating factor in the AI and services world. Very well put, Rishi, there. Okay, so there is another question from Sai. We're currently at the prototype stage and actively raising funds. It's a multi-channel outreach strategy, still effective for reaching out investors at this stage? And if so, which communication platforms or channels tend to work best? Okay, so this is about investor communication. Rishi, do you
I
want
would don't reach out to investors. I mean, there's something called FOMO, but that's a separate conversation. I think
to?
I haven't raised any capital in my life. Shanda's better prepared to answer these questions. He's raised a lot of capital, right? So
No, I'll probably take this up in a separate discussions. You can definitely ping me on LinkedIn. We can have a conversation around that. In a single word, basically, it's better to get inbound from investors as compared to do any kind of outbound. To be very honest, but yeah, moving on. Oh, sorry. Like Rishi, fundamentally, if you were to start over, right? Like, what are the mistakes that you would avoid? And what is your like thinking principle in terms of like overall GTM and how would you decide your goals? And it's like a large bucket, but like if you can break this down into multiple different parts. But yeah, I mean, since now you've done it once, how would you do it the second time?
I don't think I'd be able to do it differently, Shan,
Hmm.
right? Because a large part of what we are today is because of the mistakes we made over the last 1 year, right? Your question essentially assumes that I know what I know today a year back.
Exactly. Like, what are the mistakes, basically? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I'm getting.
maybe from a utopian standpoint, but it's unreal, right? Like you will make your own mistakes, right?
Correct, correct. No, I mean, I was just asking on what are the mistakes that you would mitigate going forward?
I think the first was essentially trying to build SaaS in 2025, right? Again, maybe I should have taken a lot from my learnings from selling to lawyers, right? In my first stint and figured that, okay, fine, selling to accountants or finance professionals means that you will also have to teach them how to use a product, which is just a lost cause, right? Or it's a time taking cause, right? And especially if you're trying to ramp up fast, that's not the way to go about it, right? Maybe I would have owned up the entire services angle a lot sooner. But specifically around the GTM bit, I would double down on my network a lot more, right? So that I am able to figure out these learnings that I effectively eventually ended up doing, which allowed me to work with an automated function, right? For my scalable GTM side, right? So that's another thing. But yeah, I don't think I have a lot of great answers to this question, Shanta. I can't imagine what I would do differently, right? In hindsight.
No, of course. I think like making mistakes is a part of setting up something great. So, of course, that's a part of our journey. But
Maybe the one thing that I would have done is stuck to my intuition, right? My intuition back in July of 24 was build a services business, right? It's after speaking to a lot of investors and things like that, where I was like, no, maybe sell product in the US, right? And the learning was that, hey, no, there is a market in India as well, right? That I believe, right, will pay, right? Will pay enough for me to become $100 million or ARR business as well, right? So yeah, maybe stuck to my intuition is what I would do.
makes sense. There's one question from Neelam, which is very pointed and I love it. What are the workflows or what are the automations that you're using the most, Rishi? And what have you tried? I mean, I'll add to it. Like, what have you tried or gotten to try over time, which might or might not have worked?
Great. So I've done a bunch actually, right? So there are three questions.
The CV comes from it, and what was your daily?
I mean, like my typical ACV today, just for my Indian customers, is roughly $25,000 a year, right? Which is not a lot, but sure, it as long as my margins persist, I think I'm happy, right? What are the workflows that I've
25,000 per
no dollars.
dollars per year per account, and your accounts are mid-sized to enterprise because I couldn't understand. I was browsing through your website
We sell across the segment.
across the segment.
Yeah, so we have businesses that are doing 500 crores ARR,
Awesome.
right? And then we have businesses that have just started, right? And are just ramping up, right? The idea behind how we are building this is that you implement the FinOps process on day zero so that when the problem compounds, you don't have to solve for it then, right? Your entire process compounds within the process that we effectively set up through the platform. Happy to walk you through how we do it separately.
Yeah. What was your daily dialing rate? Like, I understood that with nRev, we can automate a lot around emails, LinkedIn, but the bottom line, 50 calls every day, fresh calls per SDR, right?
Correct.
What was your SDR team size?
I have one person.
One person. Awesome. And I assume you are the AE and the founder together, right?
No, I don't do calls. I don't have the time.
No, you don't do. So who's doing the demo? Like, are the founders doing?
I do the demos. I do the demos. I do all selling.
That's what. So AE is doing a demo. So even in our company, I am the AE and founder both. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it's a tough mix because my SDR gets really excited about AE accounts, but then I have to be like, hey, I am the AE in this equation, so we do that job. Just focus on, flywheels, right? But yeah, to answer your other question, so before I reached out to nRev, I was using a bunch of solutions, right? I had a Clay subscription, I was using Sales Navigator, I had HeyReach, I had Instantly, and I had Zapmail, right? Instantly Zapmail for my email outbound, Clay, Sales Navigator for my lead enrichment, and I had HeyReach for my LinkedIn, right? Courtesy nRev, right? Other than Instantly and Zapmail, which I continue to use, all of the other solutions have been subsumed under nRev, right? So nRev effectively helps me with my lead enrichment, lead targeting, email outbounds, email messaging outbounds, LinkedIn outbounds, right? All of those things in one place, along with the phone number enrichment as well for all of the leads that we are effectively sending emails out to on a daily basis, right? So on a daily basis, we have a dashboard where roughly 50 contacts essentially get refreshed with their phone numbers. And that gives me the target list to target that for that particular day, at least for my SDR, right? Yeah. So these are things that we are currently using nRev for, right? For me, to be very honest, Neelam, my core criteria was that is it possible for me to use one particular thing for multiple different solutions?
Right.
And in parallel, does it allow me to optimize some form of cost, right? Fortunately, right, Shayanta and nRev were able to help me with that. I don't know if the cost thing would still hold because I understand I was an early customer, but I will let Shayanta address that. Sorry for putting you a spot over there.
So, just I'm trying to understand your workflows. Instantly, you were using for setting up a whole email campaigns up.
That's correct. Instantly is just for the email outbounds, right? The entire messaging, setting up, everything is effectively taken care by nRev.
Okay. All right. So just any email outbound tool will work for that, I assume. And LinkedIn messaging was happening from nRev itself.
That's correct. It's is still happening from nRev.
Okay. And which dialer were you using or are you currently using, Rishi? Dialer कौन सा use कर रहे हो आप?
फोन फोन
अच्छा
नंबर में
मतलब okay,
हाँ
not
मेरे को
right.
पैसे नहीं खर्च करना था।
Right, right. Yeah. Cool. Understood. Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thanks.
Perfect. Yeah.
But I remember, Rishi, one thing that I learned from you was for the initial calls, at least you picked up the phone and did the calling, right?
Yeah.
Any learnings from that? And yeah.
So essentially, I think one of the things that I take extremely seriously is that you need to get your own feet muddy before you can expect someone else to do it. And the other part that I wanted to establish was that I wanted to establish baselines so that I could then gauge performance, right? Now, I understand that there are some perks around founders doing certain things, right? Better response rates, conversion rates, etc. But all of those things I wanted to do so that I could figure out that, okay, fine, which parts do I want to automate and which parts do I not want to automate, right? Like, for example, outbound calls. I have a friend who's running a voice agent kind of a business, right? I didn't want to use a voice agent because making it feel personal, right, on every conversation, super helpful. And the interesting bit is that the personalization blurb that we pick up as part of the enrichment of the leads through nRev, that really helps me around my outbound calls as well, right? So it makes it a lot more real. It makes it feel like, okay, fine, I have actually done some research about that particular lead before I reached out to them. If only they knew, right, that it's not me, but yeah, right. So from that perspective, anything that I did, right, like even the email outbounds, I did them physically first before I even adopted instantly, right. For the longest time, I think I went 6 months before using any email outreach solutions, right. So I
Yeah.
used to manually send out emails, attach PDFs, and all of those things.
Yeah. I think that is not possible over scale because your deliverability takes a hit after a while. But yeah, at least initially, I think it makes sense to kind of do it again.
The thing would work is that, yeah, I mean, like I would either connect through network, right, or
Mm.
connected events and stuff like that. So there would be a meeting invite nonetheless. So I've
Yeah.
already ensured that I have them on my inbox before I start sending out marketing emails and stuff like that. But the other perk to doing this manually is that most of the times you're just writing things on the fly, right?
Mm.
Maybe you just copied a blur, but over and above that, you're just like effectively writing things on the fly. So from
Yeah.
that perspective, I think it was impossible for like Gmail to look at me as like a automated marketing solution kind of a thing.
True. Yeah.
I think there's one more question. Was there a particular message or action that got you meetings? Or do you think it was a multiple touch point with a call that got them over the line? To be very honest, I did not realize this. So Rajat, who's the other co-founder at nRev, right? He effectively pointed this out to me, right? Which was maybe I'm not scaring them enough, right? Through my messages, right? Maybe I'm not talking about the fear of missing out enough through my messages. Again, this took iteration, right? And another mistake that I made in this entire process was that I did not leverage nRev's experience early enough, right? Because the whole point of using a fractional team is so that you don't have to use your brains around it, right? There is technical expertise that they've already built out, right? That you can effectively lend as building out your own function. So from that perspective, one of the things that we iterated over and eventually figured out over a couple of months is how do we, give the sense of that, okay, fine, maybe there's something that they don't know, right? And this happens a lot with finance, right? Because you're not owning that process. You potentially outsourced it to someone else. They are telling you that, hey, boss, I've closed your books. Do you, right? Do you know if your GST filings have been done correctly, right? Do you know if your TDS filings have been done correctly? Can you even check and validate if they've been done correctly, right? So those are the, intent in those messagings that I figured out once Rajat pointed it out. So that became super helpful for me.
Can you touch upon your GTMs for different regions you launched? Like, how do you decide which channels were appropriate for which regions?
So guys, I mean, like my GTM, I only automated my GTM outbound after I figured out a muscle in that particular geography. Like for example, I don't have any outbound motions for the US. Again, I'm using what I did in the US, in India, exclusively triggering network, right? If not network, friends, right? Someone I met on the road and then be like, hey, do you know someone in the US? Those kind of things, right? Like my number one principle that I've adopted since I became an operator is be as shameless as possible. You can worry about it in a different life, right? So to answer your question, right, my GTM motions, I have not launched them across different geographies. I'm only currently the GTM motion that I run through nRev, right, is exclusively for one particular vertical within India, right? For anything that I do outside of India is all done through network today. No CAC, right? No marketing spend, right? Hopefully I have a friend who knows a friend. That's it, right? That's how I'm trying to operate.
And I'll just kind of double. Sorry, go back. Go ahead.
Right. So, like, follow up with that question. Is that not scalable? Like, like you mentioned, friends of friends, and then somebody in the network, and then, maybe koi conference where you meet somebody and then you pitch. Do you believe that it's scalable?
No, not at all. But I don't want it to be scalable. I just need to hit my first 10 customers.
I'm sorry, I joined a little late. So, is there a philosophy?
Calls has the highest conversion rate. You know what beats that as well? Word of mouth.
Okay.
Right. And word of mouth, you will not be able to do through outbound campaigns. You'll only be able to do it through friends of friends of friends. Yeah. Sorry, second question. I think you had one more, right?
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I joined a little late. Apologies for that. I wanted to understand the importance of the first 10 or first 20, significance of the number that was mentioned in the title.
So the first 20 customers through nRev is the title. I reached out to my first 20 after doing the zero CAC, right? Network based first 10 customers, because that allowed me to first figure out the vertical that would be interesting, right? Or would find my solution most interesting. Plus, secondly, the persona that would find my solution most interesting, right? So that first, and then you automate whatever you want to automate post that, right? Because otherwise you're just praying and praying.
Yeah, and I think honestly that like the design customers that we talk about are for learnings primarily. And I was having a discussion with Rishi right before this webinar. Also, there's quite a bit to learn from the way you experiment as well, right, Rishi? Like for example, in our case, what happened was as a chance automation kind of stumbled upon cybersecurity that we realized that one particular workflow works terribly well for them. And that became my hook to get into cybersecurity now almost like 5 customers. Right. So I think it's very important to experiment continuously. And of course, like the network is the best way to experiment because the trust is already built there. I mean, I have used like honestly like my network in KGP, etc., to continuously connect with large as well as small like customers. I don't think they're customers still because my, ICP has shifted. Learnings from that might have kind of changed the way we look at the market. But it definitely helps you kind of pinpoint, where the solution fits the best. And I think, Rishi, what that was the point as well, right, for Komplai as well.
Absolutely. Just try and figure out what you'd want to generalize, and you'd only be able to generalize through early connections. Right? Ideally, you should try and do that without spending any money. And the best way to do that is by approaching your current network or your, networks.
Perfect. There was a question by Neelam, Rishi, about your sales cycle and the sales process, like free POC or anything of that sort in the Indian subcontinent.
Yeah. Indian customers are pretty bad around this. But my sales cycle to answer this question in very plain, right? I have similar sales cycles to enterprise SaaS, right? Or SaaS products, right? So the younger the businesses are, the shorter the sales cycle for me, right? The older the businesses are, right? More implementation, so the longer the sales cycles, right? Typically a 3-month sales cycle, especially for upper mid-market enterprise like customers, same way how your enterprise SaaS would also work, right? So that's one thing that we've noticed that does not shift between the nature of business that I operate versus how SaaS businesses would operate. There is still an implementation pipeline, right? Or timeline that goes into this entire sales cycle. To convert to, say, a pilot or, a priced contract, it takes me roughly 2 weeks to 3 weeks, right? And again, guys, it's predominantly because of the tailwind, right? Everyone knows that this is a problem. Everyone knows that there's a potential solution that can solve this problem, right? Now, do they see that solution in your product, right? And secondly, can you establish value fast, right? Now, that is the tailwind that I am effectively going with, right? Which is that, like, for example, in consumer brands, right? Reconciliation and closing books is a major issue, right? Just because of the number of transactions that you would have as a business. I don't need to tell them that, boss, this is a problem. They know it, right? They know that, okay, fine, AI is a potential solution to this problem. Otherwise, it'll continue to stay manual. Again, I don't need to tell them that, they know it, right? So I go and say that, hey, boss, I am an AI based or AI native, accounting solution, right? Where I don't displace any of your tech stack. I plug into it, right? So that way there is zero cost for them to effectively try something new over here. And on top of that, I'm also saying that, dude, I have my team, I have my agents. I don't need you to deploy your team to figure this out and see if it works or not. I will show you that it works. So as the moment they say, yeah, this sounds interesting, I start closing their entire books for that same month. And the idea over here is that what would take T plus 2 for you, right? Can I do it on T itself for using my solution? So did everyone catch that?
There was a bit of a lag, but I mean, Rishi brilliantly kind of put in how avoiding friction is the point, I guess.
So, Rishi, sorry, I think I'm a bit confused with Komplai. So, it is the services plus the product component going together?
Yes.
Okay, understood.
So it's my team that's using the product, not my customer's team, right? My customers are just consuming information from the product.
And still you need an implementation time.
That's because when you service or when you try to sell to larger businesses, like even think about, let's take Spot Draft as an example, right? Which is that, okay, fine, I'm going to help you draft and review and execute contracts faster, right? Now you're specifically dealing with a contract, right? But when you sell to enterprises, that contract needs to be verified by procurement, by finance, by legal. Then there is a sales where it needs to map to the CRM. So you're not solving for the contract as much as the contract ka process. Similarly, while I'm solving for accounting, when I target mid-market and enterprise businesses, right, it goes more towards solving for FinOps processes so that accounting becomes faster. Accounting is manual nonetheless, but even collecting information and gathering all of this information is also manual. So to do accounting fast, I also need to collect information fast. That's where the implementation comes in. I like it because once the product is in place, it's impossible for you to rip me out. Has your buyer persona changed much when compared to your initial ICP? 100%, right? Like Shanta said, right? I mean, like, you figure things out through iteration and trial and error. We figured out our industry focus, right? Across the different segments, agar small hai, mid-market hai, enterprise hai, who would be your buyer, who would be your champion user, right? So all of those things effectively are a learning process, right? Not something that you should avoid and not something you can avoid. The demoing the product, Abhi, definitely helps, right? The reason for that is because I am building something that people are anticipating, right? But what you have to also take into account is that anyone who thinks of an accounting software thinks that only accountants can use it, right? But you would know the way we are building the product is that we are not building for accountants, right? We are building for the operators or the ones who would consume the information produced by the accountants, right? So when they see that, they're like, oh, wow, I did not anticipate this, right? And we got to that because we were thinking about it from a first principles perspective, right? I started this business knowing that I want to service operators. I don't want to service accountants, right? So which is why if any CA firm comes and tells me that, hey boss, can I use your product? I'll be like, no, I will not give it to you, right? Because the buyer or the operator that you're servicing will not ever see the work that you're doing, right? And that's the whole point, right? So I lead with like, I know what you're getting to. A lot of people say don't demo the product, collect feedback and things like that. Like for me, it's a wasted 30 minutes, right? So 10 minutes in like, hey, thanks for like, getting on the call. What resonated? What does your FinOps look like? Where are you struggling today? What would you like to automate? And then jump straight into the product, spend 15 minutes there. Last 5 minutes is effectively, okay, fine. When can we connect next? Can we do a pilot? If yes, send the NDA right there, close the NDA and collect data and start moving on.
Got it.
Like in the last week, I've closed 2 pilots, right? Which is again a 30-day pilot, nothing more than that, because I have a tangible outcome, right? I'll close your books in those 30 days. It happened over a call, right? So first call, NDA, signed NDA, second call, shared data, and we started.
Okay. Thanks. Are these free or paid pilots?
I'm not mature enough to do paid pilots yet, right? So for me, it's getting my foot through the door, right? If I am able to deliver value fast enough, I don't want to build a business thinking about the $1,000 pilot. I want to build a business thinking about the $25,000 ACV, right? So I am okay not getting paid the $1,000 because I mean, like, I'm not in that position today, right? I'm too young to say that, no, I won't do it. So then we like, mat karo. So then I'm lost now.
Yeah. I mean, in your business, it would be very difficult from someone to switch from CA to you, right?
Yeah, surprisingly not, right? It becomes only very difficult when you have a relationship which is 5 years or older. That's another thing that we figured out. Courtesy and rev. right? Because when I was doing these outbound calls, right, what I was looking at is that the age of the business, because that's something that they were enriching and sharing with me, right?
Yeah.
But then what I realized was that the more number of people who were saying that, no, I'm not interested, are the ones who are more than 5 years old, right? So as part of that enrichment, I told Shanta and Rajat, boss, मेरे को 5 साल पुराने वाले businesses चाहिए ही नहीं, right? मत भेजो, right? For anyone which is 5 years or older, I will target them through network or through that enterprise nurture wala plan, right?
Okay.
I don't want to manage them as part of my outbound campaigns.
Very interesting. And I think, Rishi, on the paid pilot bit as well, I think Gaurav put out a good question. It depends from business to business. Honestly, I've been a part of a number of SaaS implementations as well as, growth stage SaaS companies. If your tool has like a stickiness factor, as Rishi mentioned, like if you can get your roots in, you necessarily don't need to have a paid pilot. You just need to prove the outcome. And that's another thing that, Abhi was asking as well, right? One of the most brilliant, I think, salespeople at nRev, sorry, at Mindtickle, pointed demos out to painting the picture of what that person will be experiencing once your product is in place. So whether it be services or product, I think just painting that picture of where they'll be at the end of it is extremely important. Right. And if
Correct.
they can visualize it better, then even better as compared. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to paid trials, I honestly feel that when you're doing like a short stint business, which could be like short-term services like consulting or like a project basis business, there you can't afford like a free trial. You definitely have to go for a paid one. And yeah, it's difficult to kind of find out the LTV of a
Clarify though, right? I would love to be in a situation where I'm effectively getting paid for my pilots, right? But I don't have that liberty, right? I have very strong numbers that I'm chasing, right? And I have a clear revenue metric that I'm chasing as of the end of this FY, right? I don't want to waste time where one person's like, oh, you're going to charge like $2,000 for like a pilot. Let me come back to you. नहीं चाहिए मेरे को. Don't come back, right? I will show you value in the next 15 days and then let's directly have a conversation around a service contract. I don't want to have a conversation around pilots. Now, investors hate that, right? A lot of conventional theory will hate it. I don't care.
No, but I think, Rishi, the world has moved. I think it's easier to templatize pilots and spend lesser effort on the pilots and give some
Yeah.
value rather than kind of customizing every pilot to like everything that you provide in general,
Correct.
but like kind of getting to that first level of value.
No, 100% with you. But again, saying that I'm not there, right? I
Hmm.
don't have the bandwidth to be there, right?
Yeah.
Like, for example, I am AE, I am like, implementation, right? So now kitne ko implement karu main baith ke, right? I don't have the time, right? So मेरे को नहीं
Yeah.
करना है implementation किसी के लिए, especially for a pilot. I'll do implementation when you're paying me for the full contract.
Makes sense. I think we've come to the end of it, but just a final few things, Rishi. How are you looking at, so like, of course, all of us have that crazy targets of, this is the milestone that we have to reach. This is the, targets that we have. But when we come to a ground level, like how do you think ahead? I remember there was this one conversation I had with you in terms of, always at the beginning of the month being able to figure out a new audience, a new, let's say, a type of campaign, right? But how do you generally think about, GTM planning in general?
To be very honest, not well enough. I mean, like, give it a chance. I would want to be a lot more data heavy around it, right? But unfortunately, I just don't have that liberty today. But one of the things that we've set into practice in our day to day operations is just data collection, right? On a daily basis, right, across all calls made, right? We effectively collect data points on what worked, what did not work, right? What are things that we said around those calls that effectively made that conversation a lot more interesting? And we started cross utilizing those sentences during our demo calls as well, right?
Interesting.
Uh, Another thing that we've figured out is that we need lead time to set up campaigns, right? By the end of the month, if you wake up and then be like, okay, fine, campaign needs to be ready by tomorrow, that's not possible, right? So you need to like mentally be ready that, okay, fine, it needs a week, right? Because there are learnings from the 3 weeks of that particular month that you want to now incorporate into the new campaign that goes out. That could effectively mean refinement around your leads, a refinement around your messaging, refinement around your channels, right? A bunch of those things. So effectively readjusting, right, your entire ops, right, or your GTM ops, so that you are effectively managing those processes effectively. That becomes another, core requirement. And the last thing is that something that I don't know how long I want to extend it, right? But currently I'm flying with it, is that I'm just trying to do things that don't scale, right? And this is a very popular advice, right, given by a lot of these, successful founders, right? I mean, like easier to get advice once you're successful, right? But the point over here is that there are things that cannot be productized. There are things that that cannot scale, but you do it nonetheless, right? For primary reasons, core learnings, right? Logos on this thing, right? given the stage of the business that I am, that also becomes a critical part around my entire GTM planning, right? Because there will be calls that I make knowing that, okay, fine, this is not something that I will be able to close over the next 3 months, right? But just having that in, right, is super helpful because even if they don't buy it, there'll be three other people that they'll recommend, right? And yeah, fortunately, that's where I think things have been working for us. Identifying the vertical very clearly, right? Identifying the revenue segment very clearly, identifying the size of the business very clearly, and then identifying the persona that you'd want to like effectively directly talk, right? Because that's the person you need to believe that, okay, fine, you're the difference, right? And yeah, those are the three things that I think we do on a monthly basis, right? So that everything stays on track.
Makes sense. We've pretty much come to the end of the discussion agenda that we had, but open to anyone who wants to ask, Rishi, any questions. I'll also touch in case like there's any advice I might have.
I don't know if Puran's clapping or raising his hand.
How do you guide some wage pricing? We tried paid trials, it doesn't work that well. And when we say paid trials, they consider it as unproven tech. But when we show the value for sure, I mean, if it like, I mean, they have to make up their mind whether to start a work or not. We did that in the beginning and then we stopped it eventually because it was not even converting plus at all. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. I mean, my idea is that I only have that much time, right?
Exactly.
And focus on people who would actually convert, right? The problem with pilots is that it can extend. So the moment I see something extending, right, beyond a particular month, I stop chasing. Right. I'm like, okay, fine. I'll nurture this lead, right, for like maybe 6 months now, then I'll come back to them later. Right. Because if they are not prioritizing it, that is not for them large enough. Right.
If it is not a pain point that they want to really solve, then it's up to them to make a decision. I mean, like, we don't have to forcibly insert ourselves into the deal and just for the small amount or even free trials. We tried that also. It really doesn't resonate because they don't have the, what do you call?
Actually, there are a couple of hacks on that, right? Like, for example, we've created a agent of our own that audits books, right? So essentially what we do is that screw pilot, screw conversion. Let me at least show you what your books look like today, right? And that takes me a right to prepare that report. And everyone looks at it and goes like, nahi, mujhe pata hai kya hai. I know what I need to solve for. And then I flag it and then we're like, oh, this also, right? So those kind of things, that is time to value, right? And how fast can we get there? But to answer your question, Gaurav, right, on how do you price outcome based, or how do you do outcome based pricing? No one knows, right? Just figure it out. I'll tell you how I try to do it. I try to estimate cost, right? Now, given that today in my business, there are people doing what I am looking to do, right? So then I effectively just tally the cost and then come in at a fraction of it, right?
Like
And
50.
20% is too less, right? I try and target 50%, right? And yeah, 20% is too less. I feel like I'm leaving money on the table if I'm doing it at 20. Even at 50, I feel like I'm leaving money on the table. But again, get the foot in the door. Once I'm sticky, right, I can like increase my pricing back to their cost at actuals. And that would still be all right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Bobby's also a customer. I didn't want to point that out. I'm glad that he called out. But thanks for the support. One of our early customers is.
Yeah. We love the job that they're doing and they're always available and super helpful. So we definitely recommend.
Yeah, cheers. Hey, thanks, Bobby. Okay. Any other questions, guys?
I have one question. Like you mentioned, nurturing the leads, people wanted, like they would hear the demo and then, end up not using it. So, like you said, price the only point where you turn them around, or is there something else also?
Speed, efficiency, and scale. Price is never the concern. Like I
Like
said,
there is a lead that has very the lead that you've demoed, you've showed your product, and they seem very interested. And then they're like, okay, let's meet tomorrow, and then let's finalize the details, and then the next day they ghost you. So I mentioned that term.
yeah, I mean, I don't have the time for that. I mean, like, hey, if you're ghosted, I'll come back to you a year later. The idea is straightforward, right? Like, do the math, right? Say, assuming hypothetically, my per contract is $5,000, hypothetically, right? Which is roughly 50,000 bucks INR per month, right? 6 lakhs, right? I'm just assuming that 9 pay conversion. So roughly $5,000 ka contract hai. I need 200 customers to hit a million, right? Like if you don't have the time, you don't have the time. I'll find someone else who'll pay me $5,000 a year. I'm not asking $100,000 contract, right? I just need $5,000, get 200 customers in whatever the next, like this FI, so that I hit my 1 million on this product line, right?
Oh.
how many other product lines that you could have? I mean, like, this is one hypothetical math, right? Now, if that customer is willing to pay you $10,000, great. You need one customer lesser to hit your 1 million, right? But my point is that I need 200 customers to hit my 1 million, right? Now, if you're doing enterprise SaaS or enterprise selling, then sure. I mean, like in that much time, maybe you need 10 customers to hit a million, whatever that number is. My point is that you need to hit that number, right? If one guy is like taking you out for a ride, it's not worth your time, right? Just like move on, go to the next one. There are 10 for you to target.
Thank you. And a lot of thanks to both of you for, arranging this session. It's really informative.
Absolutely. I hope this was helpful.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Cheers, guys.
Awesome. Yep. I think we're up on time as well, Rishi. Thank you so much for your time. Hopefully, like we'll have some more questions and we'll probably again have a discussion around our next set of inflection points and where we see Komplai reaching next.
Yeah. And I will hold you responsible for my growth, Shanta.
That's a nice responsibility to have. For sure, Rishi. Lovely. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye bye.
Yeah. Bye.